Welcome to Mum Abroad's YouTube channel, where I'm joined today by Michelle Hallum, a British mum of two who's been living in Barcelona for 13 years. Once upon a time, Michelle was an English language teacher, but she's now a certified Jungian coach and has a degree in psychology. She's passionate about helping expat mums reach their full potential by guiding them towards an inner sense of home and security from where they can flourish and thrive. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jane.
Coaching expat mums, that's quite a niche market, Michelle. What made you decide this demographic might benefit from coaching?
Well, I think as an expat mum, I've experienced life without support and the network that I needed, especially when my children were first born. And after going through that experience myself, I realized how much I would have benefited from having somebody coaching me through the experience and helping me kind of make sense of my life. Because I think at the time I was just so in the trenches with being a mum, trying to learn how to be a mum, and also exist in a culture that isn't your own. And I'd already been here for 5 or 6 years before I became a mum, but that added extra of becoming a mum was just another layer on really what's already quite a difficult experience.
Yeah, I think you're so right. All mums, to a certain extent, lose themselves, don't they, in those early years of parenting. And I think living abroad just adds another layer of complexity. I think you're completely right. Michelle, let's go back to the beginning of your coaching journey. How did it all start?
Well, it was after my second child. She was about 2, and I wanted to go back to work. And I'd been doing some teaching work on, kind of when I could, private classes mainly. And I was looking to set up an online teaching business because just the way the teaching industry works here in Barcelona, I couldn't work in the afternoons, and that's when all the work was. So I was thinking about setting something up, and I was investigating this online. And I started getting a lot of coaches contact me about creating my online business. And I'd never really heard about coaches. I didn't really know what a coach was. And as I started investigating it, I just recognized how much of my skill set matched what a coach actually is. And when I started investigating it more, I was just like, oh my God, this is really where I want to go. I've always loved teaching English and being in groups and having the social side of conversation and hearing people's stories and all of that kind of side of teaching. But I wasn't as fulfilled as I was when I first started. I felt like I kind of peaked with that job. And when this came along, when I kind of discovered coaching, it was like I can take everything I have from teaching English into a different arena, kind of build up the skills that I was lacking at the time, and really have a purposeful job, profession.
Fabulous, isn't it? When you find that focus that you feel that you were kind of made for that.
Exactly. And I think it is normally later in life. I know some people do discover this earlier, and I'm always just so impressed by these people that knew when they were, I don't know, 13, 14, they wanted to be a lawyer or they wanted to be a doctor, and they had the dedication and motivation to kind of pursue that career their whole life. Whereas I feel like I've come into coaching, and even though I wasn't actively building my life towards that, when I kind of look back at all the experiences I've had, I'm like, wow, that's really fed into my learning and my experience. And it's like I've been doing my training all my life to kind of arrive at this point. And I do feel like a lot of people, a lot of women especially, it's later in life that we become more secure in ourselves in a lot of ways, that we start questioning what we really want from life. And I think after children as well, because maybe up until children, there's part of you that is always, if you know you want to have children, then I think there is part of you that knows there's going to be that period of your life which is going to be all consuming. And at least for me, it was like, once I ticked that box, it was like, okay, and now what? Now what's my purpose?
And it will happen again when you hit 50 or so, from my own experience, because that's when your children start leaving home. Michelle, explain to us, how does your coaching differ from other types of coaching?
So when I first started looking into coaching courses to take so that I could train to be a coach, they were pretty similar. All of them that I discovered were looking at how to build your soft skills maybe, or build your confidence, or something that is termed in the Jungian world, or at least from my training, as ego polishing. So we've got this part of us, this ego that we present out to the world, that kind of monitors how we present ourselves. And by trying to adapt or change parts of ourselves that we're not so happy about, or we think could do with some improvement, it's this idea that, you know, you're giving the ego a good old polish and making it even more presentable to the world. But the problem with this is, whenever you're pushing things away about yourself, then you're just creating what's called in Jungian coaching your shadow. So the coaching that I do is based on Jungian psychology, which is this idea that we have a conscious persona that we put out into the world, and then we have this unconscious, or these unconscious parts of us that are actually driving our behavior as much as our conscious thoughts, but we're just not aware of them because obviously they're unconscious. So my coaching, the Jungian coaching, is about bringing the things from the unconscious into the consciousness, which is basically about becoming aware of what we're really like, or what's really driving us. And by using that, we can start to integrate these parts into ourselves. So accepting everything about ourselves. And then once we can do that, then you can kind of transcend the ego, is really the aim, to kind of become more than that, because the ego is just one function of our psychology, and we've got the whole psyche that we've got access to, but we've just been limited down to thinking about the ego. So by being able to transcend it, you can enter into a place where you can decide how you behave, and you're not being conditioned to behave a certain way because of your beliefs, your values, or any other experience that you've had through your life, which has been creating this outward persona that you want to show everybody in the world. So I would say fundamentally the biggest difference with the coaching I do is this. It's the fact that we work with what's called shadow work to bring forward the unconscious aspects of ourselves into consciousness, integrate them, become whole, transcend that, and live from a place of free will.
It's quite complex, isn't it? But at the same time, I guess if you break it down into segments, and you have to kind of work with those individually, and then it's a process, isn't it, that you go through?
In fact, the biggest part of shadow work is working with what's called projection. So the idea is that things that you see in other people that either really aggravate you or anger you or create some emotional reaction, and that could be positive or negative. So people that you admire, for example, what you're actually seeing is a projection of something that you have inside of you. So the best and easiest way to understand this is if you have, and again, in a family point of view, when you've got children, normally one partner will be really triggered and aggravated by a behavior of the child, whereas the other one maybe doesn't get aggravated at all. And this is a classic example of projection. For whatever reason, let's say the dad, you know, is triggered by something, then there's something in his conditioning, in his life experience, that is making him feel very emotional about what he sees in this child. But actually all he's seeing is his own conditioned behavior that's kind of been pushed away. And this is why when you kind of work through this and you recognize that, and like you say, it is very complex, and you peel back like the layers of the onion, and you get to the root of why does that bother me so much? Like, rather than just accepting that that is annoying behavior, questioning, well, why is that annoying behavior? Because if it's not annoying that person but it's annoying me, then who gets to say it's annoying? So it's really just about opening your mind more to how you perceive the world, how you perceive other people's behaviors, and recognizing that the things that give you an emotional trigger are aspects of yourself that you're projecting out into the world. And this is a kind of way that we can work with the triggers in your life to kind of bring forward these unknown parts of yourself.
There's a quote on your website that says, "I've never fit in, yet I always consciously tried to. I wasted so much of my life beating myself up about who I am instead of owning my uniqueness and building my life around that." Um, I don't think that that's unique to you. I think that's how many women feel. Why do you think that so many women experience this kind of lack of confidence and self-doubt?
So again, I think it's multi-layered. I think when we're talking about how people perceive us, then the conditioning that we receive starts from a very young age. So our parents tell us how to behave, what's good, what's bad. And this moves up. They're doing that because of their peers, and then they're doing that because of society, and society's doing that because of past experience or history or whatever. So essentially everyone is operating from a place of conditioning where they're worried about other people's perceptions, because this comes from a place of survival. In the past, we were obviously trying to survive physically, and as we've evolved, now we're worried about surviving socially. And this is our greatest fear as human beings, as a species, is to be disconnected, because it really does feed into our fear of survival. So it's a very strong instinct we have to fit in. So our parents are trying to help us fit in, their friends are trying to help them, society's trying to help them, everyone's trying to do it. But essentially, this just creates doubt. It creates worry, stress, which is often misplaced, because at the end of the day, you cannot control other people's perceptions of you. You can only control your behavior and how you're happy to kind of show up in the world. So I think women especially are taught to be kind of quieter, to be, not take up much space, to be kind of the good girl, this. And I think women naturally want to please people, and I know that this is not a one size fits all, but I think our characteristics, our personalities are about connection, nurturing, and bringing people together. I mean, matriarchs of families holding together all the pieces and everything. So anything that we feel is going to go against that, we just don't feel like that's correct behavior, or that's not right. And so that puts in that doubt, it puts in that insecurity. We may feel we want to be a certain way, but we're being told that that's not actually the correct way to be. So this dissonance, this cognitive dissonance that it creates, this kind of uncomfortableness of, I want to show up that way, but that won't be acceptable. So there must be something wrong with me, and that's the lack of confidence. That's the self-doubt that comes creeping in, I think. And like I said, I think it's a much more global problem than an individual problem. And I think it is something that society is working towards changing. But obviously, we're all part of that, and you can only affect change when you're changing yourself.
It's something that as parents we can help our children with, isn't it? It's not something that we should just be dealing with as adults. I think we can help our children instill in them this confidence that they don't have to be like everybody else, that they don't have to fit in all of the time, and it doesn't matter if they're different, whatever that difference might be.
No, I agree. And I think it's about, for at least with my children, I'm trying to teach them this, that perspective is very, based on the person experiencing that. And so you might look at everybody. I don't know, if my daughter's at school and she feels she said something silly and everyone looked at her, it's like, in reality, you have no idea what those people are thinking. You have no idea what their opinion is of you in that moment. It's your own kind of inner guidance system well, the ego, the kind of, again, this survival instinct of, oh, maybe they're going to think this, and I'm going to be ostracized, and I'm going to be excluded from the group, and there's this fear that comes from that. And I'm just trying to nurture in my daughters of recognizing that what they see outside isn't always, almost never, a real representation of what's going on. So they have to just make sure that they're feeling comfortable in what they've done and owning their own behavior, and not taking it too seriously neither, because at the end of the day, you know, we all do and say things or behave in ways that maybe we wish we didn't, but that's also part of growth and learning, because you can only kind of know how you do want to show up in the world if you've got that experience of like, oh no, that wasn't what I wanted, that wasn't how I wanted to be. So I do think it's crucial for parents to be instilling this in their kids, you know, this idea that they, if they're worrying too much about what other people think about them, then they're giving away their power. And to be empowered, then we need to be really secure in what we think, what we believe, and how we want to present ourselves to the world.
Michelle, you offer group coaching sessions in Barcelona. Can you tell me a bit more about what they are exactly?
So at the moment, I have 2 different types of workshops running. One is called Monthly Mindset Mondays, and it's mainly for entrepreneurial expat mums that want to come once a month just to kind of examine, explore their kind of fears, doubts, worries about what's going on with their business. Obviously, this will feed into their personal life as well, because you know you're constantly juggling everything when you've got kids. So your business and your family life are definitely dependent on one another, let's say. So it gives women a chance to talk about what's coming up for them, what they're finding difficult, and then we can explore ways in which their mind is actually creating the problem. Because a lot of the time, like I've just been talking about with the different perspectives, it's what we think other people are thinking, rather than, and allowing that doubt and that insecurity to come in and kind of shake us from the path that we feel we want to be on. So it's about really understanding the underlying reasons for that, and being able to reset the way they're approaching their business by changing the way they view how they're showing up in the world, really. And then the other one is for coaching and connection, and this is more for mums that have got babies and toddlers that maybe don't have somebody that can have their kids for them to go to a coaching circle, and this way they can come along. And this is really about connection, so this kind of inner connection, connecting deeply with yourself, especially when your kids are kind of in that younger stage, as you said before. I think this is when we start going through a bit of a transformational period with, who am I? You know, what role do I play in society? What role do I play in my family? Who is this little child that's looking at me? And how do I, you know, fit that into my world? Like everything starts to just change. And I think you can lose connection with yourself, and that kind of has a ripple effect that you lose connection with others. So these sessions are really designed to help women reconnect with themselves, so that they know what kind of connections they want to have with the external world as well. And this way, it's just about making connections within the group, making connections within themselves, and then taking that out into their lives, so that they can start making connections with other people. And this is really about helping them find their tribe and find their people and building their tribe.
Michelle, let's finish with your Expat Mum Stories project. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So as I've been working with expat mums, obviously it's intriguing. It's as an expat mum, when it's the first kind of conversation you have. No, so where are you from, and how long have you been here, and how many kids have you got, and did you come here straight from there, or did you go somewhere else? And I am fascinated by hearing other people's stories, because I think I did feel disconnected for such a long time, And I actually deliberately avoided the expat community before I became a mum, because I had this whole kind of stereotypical British woman that comes to Spain, doesn't learn any language, doesn't, you know, embrace the culture, doesn't integrate with society, and you have this like little bubble that you're operating under. So I actually avoided it a lot. And then becoming an expat mum was like, that's just like suicide. You need to have your people. And in fact, expat mums are my people. So it's not to say that I'm not integrating with the rest of society, quite the opposite. But it's just that recognition, like the only people that are really going to truly understand what I've been through and what my life is about are going to be people that are in the same situation. And I just thought it would be a great project to interview these women, to hear their stories, and to share them on Instagram. Well, on Instagram, there's just like a little teaser of who's coming up next. And then I'm posting the videos on my YouTube channel so that people can go there and they can see different expat mum stories and feel connected to something that is basically their people.
I love the sound of that. I really do. And I just want to pick up on something that you just said, which I think is really important. And I've read somebody else say the same thing very recently, that as an expat mum, they desperately tried not to be an expat mum. They desperately tried to fit in many different ways with the local culture, the local language, with local mums. And they really fought against being or having British friends or English-speaking friends. And at some point in their expat journey, they realized that they didn't have to choose between one or the other. It wasn't about choosing. It was actually about having one foot in the door of the local community and one foot in the door of the expat community, and finding the balance that suits you, and that we can all combine those two kind of parts of our lives to become one. And I think it's quite a revelatory moment as a foreigner in another country to realize that actually you can find a balance between the two things, and you probably need both of those things in your life.
Absolutely. And I think becoming an expat mum helped me with that, because my partner is Catalan. So my children are growing up with the two cultures in our household. And just seeing that that works and that that's okay, you know, that we have conversations at the dinner table that are a combination of, you know, Spanish, English, and Catalan, depending on who's talking and who's, you know, which interaction's happening, but never excluding anyone neither. And it's just like, well, yeah, what am I fighting here? Because at the end of the day, this is what's happening in my home, and why can this not happen outside, you know, with other people as well in the community? So I think once I had my children, that was the kind of turning point of going, oh, I can actually have both, and it's okay to have both. And I'm not selling out by having people that I speak in English to, because at the end of the day, you know, I do have a good level of Catalan, but it's never going to be like English. And obviously the shared culture and the shared language that you can speak without thinking, and you can express yourself in a million different ways. You know, that's something that is part of who you are. And denying that part of yourself as well is another sense of disconnection. And I think this is what I used to feel when my daughter was first born, that deliberate disconnection that I'd created from my kind of British side, if you like. And now it feels like, I don't know if I'm British, I'm not obviously Catalan, I don't have, like, you know, I have residency here, but, you know, there's not this kind of dual nationality. And it's like, but I don't really know what I feel like I am anymore. And that's almost kind of ties in nicely to what I was speaking about with the coaching that I offer as well, is that there doesn't need to be a separation. You can be all of it. It's not that you have to push any one thing away, because this is your life. It's the one life that you have. And there's no one keeping score saying, oh, you have to, you know, like, well, you did that well, you did that badly. I mean, we keep our own score in our head. But I mean, in reality, no one's keeping that score. And your life is there to live, and you have to live it to the fullest and the best you can. And if that means that you are part of the expat community, and you're part of the community of where you live, and you also maybe have other things as well, it's like all of this is just giving you more from your life. And I think that has got to be the purpose of your life, isn't it? Is to live it to the fullest that you possibly can.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's about living a full and rich life and finding the balance that works for you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Michelle, I've loved talking to you today. It's really interesting to find out more about your Expat Mum project and your style of coaching. I'm going to put your website address at the bottom of the screen now. That's www.michellehallumcoaching.com. If anybody wants to find out more about you or contact you, they'll find your details there. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you, Jane. It's been a pleasure. I've loved talking to you too.